The holding cell smelled like metal and something Jake Carter could not name. He sat against the cold wall and watched the two Torvian guards outside the energy barrier. They were tall creatures, covered in dark green scales, with 4 arms and eyes that never seemed to blink. They looked at him the way someone might look at a small insect. Amy Lawson paced a small space, her boots making soft sounds on the floor. She was a xenobiologist, and even now, even as a prisoner, she could not stop studying their captors. Their scales overlap like armor plates, she whispered. Natural protection against blades and teeth. Impressive evolution. Great, Ben Torres said from his corner. He was older than the others, an engineer with gray at his temples and grease permanently under his fingernails. They have built-in armor. We have soft skin that bruises if you look at it wrong. Very fair. Jake said nothing. He was watching the guards, but his mind was elsewhere. 3 days ago, their transport vessel had suffered engine failure near Torvian space. The collective had intercepted them, and now here they sat. Specimens for study. The energy barrier flickered, and a new Torvian entered. This one wore different clothing, simpler and cleaner. She carried a datapad and moved with careful steps. Her scales were lighter than the guards, almost gray. I am Scholar Nithra, she said. Her voice came through a translator device on her collar, flat and mechanical. I have been assigned to study your species. You are the first humans the collective has captured alive. Lucky us, Ben muttered. Nithra tilted her head, a gesture that seemed to mean curiosity. I have reviewed your biological data. Your species is confusing. Amy stepped closer to the barrier. Confusing how? You have no natural weapons, Nithra said, reading from her pad. No claws, no venom, no armored skin. Your teeth are small and flat. Your eyes cannot see in darkness. Your hearing is limited. Your sense of smell is almost non-existent compared to most species. She looked up at them. By all measurements, humans should have gone extinct long ago. You are weak. Jake finally spoke. And yet, here we are. Nithra's eyes focused on him. Yes, this is the confusing part. Your species has spread across many star systems. You build cities and ships and weapons. This should not be possible for creatures so poorly designed for survival. Maybe your measurements are missing something, Jake said, before Nithra could respond. Heavy footsteps announced a new arrival. The guards straightened immediately, fear visible in their body language. Commander Vrexel was massive, even for a Torvian. His scales were nearly black, scarred from countless battles. He wore armor that gleamed under the harsh lights, and he moved like something that had never known defeat. These are the humans? His voice was deep, a growl shaped into words. He studied them through the barrier with obvious disgust. Pathetic. I have seen prey animals with more presence. Commander, Nithra said carefully, they may have scientific value. Their survival as a species suggests hidden capabilities that we have not yet identified. Hidden capabilities. Vrexel made a sound that might have been laughter. Look at them, Scholar. Soft flesh. Dull senses. They cook their food because their weak bodies cannot digest it raw. They are barely above animals. A Torvian soldier approached and spoke quietly to the commander. Vrexel's expression shifted, and he turned to look down the corridor. Jake followed his gaze and felt his breath catch. They were transporting something in a containment field. The field was thick, layered with energy barriers that hummed with power. Inside, something massive moved. Jake could see glimpses of dark flesh, of limbs that bent in wrong directions, of eyes that glowed with dim red light. The guards around the transport looked terrified. These were soldiers who had probably faced death many times, and they were afraid. What is that? Amy asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Nithra followed her gaze. That is a Gorth, the deadliest predator in 12 star systems. Even armed Torvian warriors cannot face one alone. It takes a full hunting party with heavy weapons to bring one down, and casualties are expected. The creature passed their cell. For a moment, one of those red eyes turned toward Jake. He did not look away. The Gorth is being transported to a secure habitat for study, Nithra continued. It was captured at great cost. 7 warriors died in the hunt. Why study something so dangerous? Ben asked. Because understanding dangerous things gives us power over them, Rexel answered. His eyes were still on the transport. The Gorth fears nothing. It kills without hesitation. It is the perfect predator. He turned back to the humans with contempt. Everything you are not. Jake watched the containment field disappear around a corner. His mind was working, processing what he had seen. The creature was large, yes. Terrifying, certainly. But it moved in a specific way. Its limbs suggested certain muscle structures. Its eyes, positioned on the front of its head, meant forward-focused vision. Probably poor peripheral awareness. Interesting, Jake said quietly. Rexel heard him. What did you say? Nothing, Commander. Just thinking. The Torvian leader snorted. Think all you wish, human. Your thoughts are as weak as your bodies. You will remain here until we decide what to do with you. Perhaps dissection. Your species has no value beyond curiosity. He turned and walked away. Nithra lingered for a moment, studying Jake with those unblinking eyes. Then she followed the commander. The energy barrier hummed in the silence. Jake, Amy said slowly. What are you thinking? He did not answer immediately. He was still looking down the corridor where the Gorth had disappeared. Jake, Ben said, his voice carrying a warning. I know that look. Whatever you are planning, stop. Jake finally turned to face his companions. There was something in his expression that they had not seen before. Not fear, not desperation. Something closer to calculation. That creature, he said. Did you see how it moved? Amy nodded slowly. 8 limbs. Probably an ambush predator based on the build. Heavy front body mass. Heavy front body mass, Jake repeated. Which means it would be slow to turn. And those eyes focused forward. Blind spots on the sides and rear. Ben stood up alarmed. No. Whatever you are thinking, the answer is no. Humans have been hunting large predators for thousands of years, Jake said calmly. We drove them to extinction on our own planet. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves. All of them bigger, stronger, faster than us. All of them gone or controlled. Those were Earth animals, Amy protested. This is an alien killing machine from 12 star systems away. Jake smiled slightly. A predator is a predator. They all have weaknesses. And I think I know what I want for dinner. Amy and Ben stared at him in silence. Down the corridor, the Gorth roared. 5 days passed in the holding cell. The Torvians provided nutrient paste twice a day, a gray substance that tasted like nothing and sat heavy in the stomach. Jake ate it without complaint, but his eyes were always moving, always watching. Amy noticed changes in their captors. The guards rotated every 8 hours, but they were beginning to watch the humans with something other than contempt. It looked almost like confusion, perhaps even concern. They expected us to break, she said quietly on the 4th day. Prisoners usually do, but we have not. Ben was in the corner, working with scraps of material he had collected from their food trays. His hands moved with the careful precision of someone who had built machines his entire life. Give me another day, he said. I can make something useful from this. Jake had found a broken panel in the wall, hidden behind a loose section of flooring. Inside were discarded components, things the Torvians had thrown away. He sorted through them with patience, selecting certain pieces, discarding others. "What are you building?" Amy asked. "Heat source," Jake replied. "Small, but enough." "Enough for what?" Jake did not answer. He just kept working. On the 5th day, Commander Vrexel returned. He stood outside the barrier with Nithra beside him, and he studied the humans with narrowed eyes. The cell had changed. The humans had organized their small space, created sections for sleeping, exercise, and work. Ben had fashioned tools from scraps. Jake had built his heating device. Amy had started a small journal using materials she had requested from Nithra for research purposes. "They are adapting," Nithra said, her voice carrying something like wonder. "No other captive species has done this. Most become passive within 3 days. These humans are becoming more active." "They are stalling," Vrexel growled, "waiting for rescue that will not come." "No," Nithra said. "I do not think so. Watch their movements. They are preparing for something." Vrexel stepped closer to the barrier. "What are you doing, humans? What is your plan?" Jake stood and walked to face the commander. He was so much smaller than the Torvian soft flesh against scale and muscle. But he did not look afraid. "I have a proposal," Jake said. Vrexel's eyes narrowed. "You are not in a position to propose anything. Hear me out. You think humans are weak. You think we survived by accident, by luck. I want to prove you wrong." The commander made that grinding laugh sound. "And how would you do that?" "Put us in the Gorth habitat. Let us face your deadliest predator. If we die, you lose nothing but specimens you consider worthless anyway. But if we survive, you give us better quarters and proper equipment." Silence filled the corridor. Nithra's datapad slipped from her fingers and clattered on the floor. Even the guards seemed frozen. "You want to face the Gorth?" Vrexel spoke slowly, as if checking that he had understood correctly. "The creature that kills our best warriors? The predator that has no equal in 12 systems? Yes, you have no weapons, no armor, no claws or venom or strength. We have something better," Jake said. "We have 10,000 years of hunting experience built into our blood. We have brains that evolved to solve exactly this kind of problem." Vrexel stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh this time, loud and harsh. "This is madness. Human madness. But it will be entertaining to watch." He turned to Nithra. "Prepare the habitat. Let them have their foolish death." "Commander," Nithra protested, "these are valuable research subjects. We have learned more about human behavior in 5 days than we expected to learn in months. To waste them on entertainment, they made the request," Vrexel interrupted. "I am simply granting it. Besides, their deaths will teach us something too. We will learn exactly how weak humans truly are." He walked away, still laughing. Nithra looked at the humans through the barrier, her expression troubled. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would you choose death?" "We are not choosing death," Amy said. "We are choosing to show you something." After Nithra left, Ben grabbed Jake by the shoulder. "Have you lost your mind? That thing is a monster. We saw it. 8 legs, armored body, built to kill. We have sharp sticks at best." "Our ancestors killed mammoths with sharp sticks," Jake replied calmly. "They hunted saber-toothed cats with rocks and fire. They drove predators 10 times their size into extinction. The Gorth is dangerous, but it is still just a predator. It has patterns. It has weaknesses. We just need to find them." Amy was pacing again, but this time with purpose. "I have been thinking about its biology. The front-heavy build suggests it strikes forward, probably with those front limbs. If we can stay to its sides, keep moving, it will have trouble tracking all 3 of us at once." "Good," Jake said. What else? The eyes. Red glow suggests heat vision. It probably hunts in darkness. But heat vision can be confused. Multiple heat sources moving in different directions would create chaos for its targeting. Ben ran a hand through his hair, looking at his makeshift tools. I can build distractions. Noisemakers, things we can throw. If it relies on movement detection, we can make it chase shadows. Jake nodded. Now you are thinking like humans. This is still suicide, Ben said. Maybe, but I would rather die fighting than rot in a cell. And I do not plan to die. He turned to face his companions fully. Listen to me. Every species that has faced the Goroth has tried to match its strength. They build bigger weapons, heavier armor, trying to become predators themselves. But that is not what humans do. We do not beat predators by becoming them. We beat them by being smarter, more patient, more adaptable. We beat them by working together in ways they cannot understand. Amy and Ben exchanged looks. Despite everything, Jake's confidence was infectious. One more thing, Jake said. Before we go in, I need you to get me something from Nithra. Salt, oil, and any dry plants they have. Tell her it is for a human ritual. A ritual? Amy asked, something like that. Jake smiled. I always plan ahead. The next morning, the energy barrier dropped. Torvian guards escorted them through winding corridors to a massive door. Beyond it, Jake could hear distant sounds of the habitat, artificial wind moving through artificial trees. Nithra met them at the entrance. She handed Amy a small container. The items you requested. I do not understand their purpose. You will, Jake said. The doors opened. The habitat stretched before them, a simulated jungle under artificial lights. Somewhere in that green darkness, the Goroth waited. Jake gripped his makeshift spear and stepped through the door. Behind them, Commander Vrexel watched from an observation platform. The arena was filling with Torvians eager to witness the execution. Bets were being placed. The longest survival estimate was 4 minutes. Vrexel settled into his seat. This would be entertaining. The habitat was larger than Jake had expected. Artificial trees rose toward a ceiling hidden in manufactured mist. The ground was soft with fake soil and fallen leaves that felt real enough under his boots. Distant sounds filled the air, water flowing somewhere, wind moving through branches, and beneath it all, something breathing. Amy stayed close to Jake while Ben moved to their left, keeping distance between the three of them. They had discussed the plan during the night. Spread out, stay mobile. Never give the Goroth a single target. And you see it? Ben whispered through the small communication device Nithra had provided. She had claimed it was for research purposes, to record their final words. Jake suspected she simply wanted to understand. Not yet, Amy replied. But I can smell something. Metallic, like blood and copper. Jake scanned the trees. The artificial light came from above, creating shadows that moved with the simulated wind. Perfect conditions for an ambush predator. The Goroth could be anywhere. On the observation platform, hundreds of Torvians watched through screens and direct viewing ports. Commander Vrexel sat in the center, his eyes fixed on the humans below. A timer floated in the corner of the main screen. 30 seconds had passed. The female is moving toward the water source, one of his officers reported. The older male is near the eastern tree line. The leader remains in the clearing. They are splitting up, Vrexel observed. Foolish. The Goroth will pick them off one by one. Nithra stood at the edge of the platform, her datapad recording everything. She was not so certain. The humans moved with purpose, not panic. Their separation seemed deliberate, coordinated. In the habitat, Jake found what he was looking for. A game trail, pressed into the soft ground by something heavy. He knelt and touched the track. Fresh. The Goroth had passed here recently. I have its trail, he said softly. Moving northeast. Amy, circle around to the far side of that rock formation. Ben, stay where you are and get ready with the distractions. Copy, they both replied. Jake followed the trail deeper into the trees. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. Fear was natural. Fear kept you alive. The trick was not letting it control you. A branch snapped somewhere ahead. Jake froze. Through the leaves, he caught a glimpse of movement. Dark flesh, legs moving with terrible grace, and those eyes, those glowing red eyes turning, searching, hunting. The Goroth was beautiful in a horrible way. Its body was built for killing, every limb ending in curved claws that could tear through Torvian armor. Its head was wedge-shaped, designed to ram through obstacles. Along its back, bony plates created natural armor that weapons would struggle to penetrate. But Jake saw something else. He saw the way it moved, always forward, always leading with that heavy head. He saw the slight hesitation when it turned, the way its body had to pivot around its center mass. He saw the gaps between those armor plates, thin lines of vulnerable flesh. I have visual, he whispered. It is bigger than I thought. Amy, are you in position? Almost. 20 more seconds. Ben? Ready. Just say the word. The Goroth lifted its head. Its nostrils flared, tasting the air. It had caught their scent. On the observation platform, the crowd leaned forward. The timer read 2 minutes and 12 seconds. The Goroth had found its prey. Now, Jake said. Ben threw the first distraction, a piece of metal that clattered against rocks to the west. The Goroth's head snapped toward the sound, its hunting instincts triggered. It charged, moving faster than anything that size should move, crashing through vegetation toward the noise. But there was nothing there. The creature stopped, confused. Another sound came from the east, where Amy had thrown her own distraction. The Goroth turned again, slower this time. Beginning to understand that something was wrong. Jake moved. He ran through the trees, silent as he could manage, coming up behind the creature while its attention was divided. His spear was ready, aimed at the gap between armor plates that he had identified. One chance. One strike. The Goroth sensed him at the last moment. It began to turn, those red eyes seeking the new threat. But Jake had been right. The turn was slow, the heavy body fighting its own momentum. Jake drove the spear forward with all his strength. The point found the gap, sinking deep into flesh that had never known a wound. The Goroth screamed, a sound that shook leaves from trees and sent birds scattering from their hiding places. The creature thrashed, trying to reach the weapon buried in its side. Jake dove away, rolling across the ground as massive claws swept through the space where he had stood. It is wounded, he shouted. Keep it moving. Do not let it focus. Amy emerged from cover, throwing stones that struck the Goroth's head and eyes. The creature turned toward her, enraged, but Ben was already creating more noise from the opposite direction. The predator that had never faced coordinated prey found itself surrounded by threats it could not track. The crowd on the observation platform had gone silent. The timer read 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The humans were still alive. More than alive. They were fighting. Rexel stood from his seat, unable to believe what he was seeing. Impossible, he breathed. The Goroth was bleeding now, the wound in its side slowing it down. Jake had retrieved his spear and circled for another strike. The humans moved like a single organism, communicating without words, anticipating each other's actions. When the Goroth charged Amy, Ben created a distraction that pulled its attention. When it turned toward Ben, Jake struck again, opening a new wound. When it tried to corner Jake, Amy threw rocks at its eyes, buying him time to escape. 7 minutes. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. The Goroth was staggering now, its movements sluggish, its roars weaker. Blood loss and exhaustion were taking their toll. The creature that had killed 7 Torvian warriors was being defeated by 3 soft, clawless humans. Jake made his final approach. The Goroth saw him coming but could not respond. Its legs were trembling, struggling to hold its weight. Those red eyes, once burning with predatory hunger, now held something else. Confusion, perhaps even fear. "I am sorry," Jake said quietly. "You are a magnificent creature, but I have people to protect." He drove the spear home. The Goroth fell. The ground shook with the impact, and then there was silence. Just the sound of 3 humans breathing hard, standing over the body of the deadliest predator in 12 star systems. Jake looked up at the observation platform, at the hundreds of faces frozen in shock. He found the camera and spoke clearly. "Now I need that cooking equipment." On the platform, Nithra's datapad beeped. 19 minutes and 42 seconds. The humans had won. Rexel stood motionless, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. The creatures he had dismissed as weak had done what his best warriors could not. They had faced the impossible and made it look like a coordinated hunt. How? He finally asked. How is this possible? No one had an answer. The cooking equipment arrived within an hour. Jake had expected resistance, delays, excuses. Instead, Torvian workers carried in portable heating units, metal surfaces for cutting, and containers for water. They moved with nervous energy, stealing glances at the 3 humans who stood beside the fallen Goroth. Commander Rexel himself oversaw the delivery. He had not spoken since the hunt ended. His face was unreadable, scales tight against his skull in what Amy suspected was the Torvian expression for deep confusion. "You have what you asked for," Rexel finally said. His voice was flat, empty of its usual contempt. "What now?" Jake knelt beside the Goroth's body. He ran his hand along the armored plates, feeling for the spaces between them. "Now we cook. Cook." Rexel repeated the word as if it tasted strange. "You killed the deadliest predator in known space, and you want to cook it?" "I told you I was planning dinner." Ben was already examining the heating units, checking their power levels and temperature ranges. Amy had pulled out her journal and was making notes on Goroth anatomy, identifying which parts might be edible and which might be toxic. "The muscle tissue looks similar to Earth proteins," she said. "Dense, probably tough from all the movement. The internal organs are more concerning. I would avoid anything near the scent glands." Jake nodded and began his work. His hands moved with practiced skill as he separated flesh from bone, removing sections of meat that the Torvians had never considered food. To them, the Goroth was a monster, a force of nature that could not be tamed. To Jake, it was the same as any animal his ancestors had hunted on Earth. Dangerous, yes, but still made of muscle and fat and tissue that could be prepared and consumed. Nithra had requested permission to observe closely. She stood nearby with her datapad, recording every movement. "Explain what you are doing," she said. "For the records." "Butchering," Jake replied without looking up. "Breaking down the animal into usable pieces. Humans have done this for hundreds of thousands of years. We hunted large prey on our home world, creatures much bigger and stronger than us. We learned to use every part of them. Meat for food, bones for tools, hide for clothing. But why this way? Why cut and separate? Would it not be easier to simply consume the flesh raw?" Jake smiled. "Try eating a raw Goroth. Tell me how that works out." Nithra looked at the dense muscle tissue and understood. Even Torvian jaws would struggle with such material. The fire pit that Ben had constructed was burning steadily now. Jake had placed a flat metal surface over it, creating a cooking area that heated evenly. He laid out his tools, simple things made from salvaged materials, but effective. The container from Nithra sat nearby. Salt, oil, and dried herbs from the Torvian homeworld. Jake had not known what flavors they would provide, but he had faith in basic chemistry. Salt enhanced taste. Oil conducted heat. Herbs added complexity. These principles were universal. He began with the oil, spreading it across the hot surface. It sizzled and popped, filling the air with a sound that made nearby Torvians flinch. Then he laid the first piece of Garth meat onto the heat. The smell started. Immediately, Jake had cooked thousands of meals in his life. He had worked in restaurants during school, fed crews on long space voyages, prepared food in conditions that would make professional chefs weep. But he had never experienced anything quite like this. The Gorath meat released aromas that were strange and familiar at the same time. Rich and deep, with hints of something almost sweet beneath the protein scent. The heat was transforming the tissue at a molecular level, breaking down tough fibers, releasing fats, creating compounds that had never existed before this moment. On the observation platform, Torvians began to react. They shifted in their seats, their nostrils flaring. Some looked disturbed. Others looked curious. A few looked hungry, though they did not have words for what they were feeling. "What is that smell?" one of the officers asked. Vrexel did not answer. He was staring at the smoke rising from Jake's cooking surface, his expression changing in ways that even Nithra could not read. Jake worked patiently. He added salt to the meat as it cooked, watching the crystals dissolve into the surface. He crushed the dried herbs between his fingers and let them fall onto the sizzling flesh. He adjusted the heat, moving pieces to hotter or cooler spots depending on their thickness. Amy watched in fascination. She had seen Jake cook before on their transport ship, but this was different. This was art disguised as survival. "You are not just feeding us," she said quietly. "You are proving something." "I am proving everything," Jake replied. "Every species in this galaxy has dismissed humans because we cook our food. They see it as weakness, a sign that we cannot survive on raw nutrition like real predators. But they have it backwards." He flipped a piece of meat, revealing a surface that had transformed from gray flesh to golden brown perfection. Cooking is not a weakness. It is a superpower. It lets us eat things other species cannot. It kills parasites and bacteria that would make us sick. It unlocks nutrients that raw food cannot provide. And it turns simple survival into something more. Something more? Culture, tradition, community. Every human society in history gathered around fire to share cooked food. It is how we became what we are. The first batch was done. Jake removed the pieces from the heat and let them rest on a clean surface. This was important, he explained to Nithra. The resting period allowed the internal temperatures to equalize and the juices to redistribute through the meat. Ben and Amy received the first portions. They had earned them. Ben bit into his piece and closed his eyes, savoring the taste. Amy ate more carefully, analyzing the flavors even as she enjoyed them. "This is incredible," Ben said. "It tastes like beef and something else. Something I have never had before." "Garth," Jake said simply. "Tastes like victory." The second batch was for Nithra. Jake prepared it with extra care, adjusting the seasoning to what he guessed might suit Torvian taste preferences. He cut the meat into smaller pieces, easier for someone unfamiliar with eating this way. He extended the plate toward her. "Would you like to try?" Nithra hesitated. Her entire life, she had consumed food raw. Their species had done so for millions of years. The concept of heat-transformed food was alien in the truest sense, but the smell was overwhelming. Something in her biology, some ancient response buried deep in her cells, was telling her that this was food. Real food. Food that would nourish in ways she had never experienced. She took a piece and placed it in her mouth. The observation platform fell silent, every eye on the scholar. They watched as she chewed slowly, as her expression shifted through confusion to surprise to something that approached wonder. She swallowed. Then she reached for another piece. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What have you done to this creature?" Jake smiled. "I seasoned it." Up on the platform, Rexel stood. His hands gripped the railing as he watched his scholar eat food prepared by prisoners. The smell had reached him now, carried on the habitat's air circulation. His mouth was doing something strange, producing fluid in anticipation of food he had never tasted. "Commander," one of his officers asked nervously, "what do we do?" Rexel was silent for a long moment. Then he began walking toward the stairs that led down to the habitat floor. "I want to try it," he said. Commander Rexel descended from the observation platform with the weight of his entire worldview pressing down on his shoulders. The crowd above watched in stunned silence as their military leader walked toward the three humans and their cooking fire. No one could remember seeing the commander show curiosity about anything. He conquered. He commanded. He did not investigate. Jake continued his work as Rexel approached. He had prepared a fresh batch of garth meat, larger pieces this time, seasoned with heavier amounts of salt and herbs. Something told him that Torvian taste would require stronger flavors. The commander stopped a few steps away. His guards moved to follow, but he raised a hand to stop them. This moment was his own. "Scholar Nithra ate your food," Rexel said. "She claims it is unlike anything she has experienced." "That is probably accurate," Jake replied, not looking up from his cooking. Raw food and cooked food are fundamentally different things. Different textures, different flavors, different nutritional availability. You have been eating one way your entire life. This is something new. Something new. The commander repeated the words slowly. The Torvian collective has existed for 12,000 years. We have conquered 60 star systems. We have consumed every prey species in our territory. And you are telling me we have been eating wrong? Not wrong, incomplete. Jake removed the finished meat from the heat and placed it on a clean surface. He cut it into pieces appropriate for Torvian mouths, larger than what he had given Nithra. Then he extended the plate toward the commander. "Find out for yourself." Rexel stared at the offered food. The smell was doing strange things to his senses. His body was responding in ways he did not recognize, preparing for consumption in new patterns. His mind, trained by decades of military discipline, struggled against the unfamiliar impulses. He took a piece. The taste was immediate and overwhelming, rich and complex in ways that raw flesh could never achieve. The heat had transformed the gorth from tough predator meat into something tender, something that released flavor with every bite. The salt enhanced natural tastes that had been hidden before. The herbs added layers of sensation that built upon each other. Rexel had eaten countless creatures across dozens of worlds. He had consumed the flesh of enemies and the meat of prizes. But he had never tasted anything like this. He reached for another piece before he realized what he was doing. How? The question came out rough, almost desperate. How does fire do this? Jake finally looked up at the commander. Heat breaks down the structure of proteins. It creates new chemical compounds that our tongues can detect. It transforms tough tissue into tender material. These are basic principles of chemistry, but my species spent 100,000 years learning to apply them. 100,000 years. Rexel processed this number. Your species is young by galactic standards. You have existed only 200,000 years. You spent half that time learning to cook, learning to survive. Cooking is not separate from survival. It is the key to it. We cook because it gives us access to more food sources. We cook because it allows us to thrive in environments where raw nutrition would not sustain us. We cook because it brings us together as communities. Jake gestured at the fire, at his companions, at the fallen Garth. Every human gathering in history has centered around prepared food. Families share meals. Strangers become friends over dinner. Treaties are signed at feasts. Cooking is not weakness. Cooking is what makes us human. Nithra had been recording everything, but now she lowered her datapad. "Commander, may I speak freely?" Rexel nodded, still chewing. "I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood human capabilities. Our initial assessment labeled them as weak based on physical characteristics. No claws, no armor, no venom. But these metrics failed to account for what humans actually possess." She paused, organizing her thoughts. They possess adaptability. They possess creativity. They possess the ability to look at any situation and find advantages that other species would never consider. She gestured toward the Goroth carcass. This creature was the terror of 12 systems. Every species that encountered it tried to fight it with strength. Bigger weapons, heavier armor, more warriors. The humans brought 3 individuals with sticks, and they won in under 20 minutes. Then they turned the deadliest predator in known space into a meal. Rexel swallowed his food and stood silent for a long moment. The crowd above waited. The guards waited. Jake and his companions waited. "I have led armies for 60 years, the commander finally said. "I have conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and expanded the collective's territory beyond what my predecessors could imagine. In all that time, I believed strength was the only truth. The strong survive. The weak perish. Simple mathematics." He looked at Jake with new eyes. "But you have shown me a different equation. You have shown me that the truly dangerous species are not the ones with the biggest claws. They are the ones who can adapt, who can transform, who can take any situation and remake it to their advantage." He turned to face the observation platform, raising his voice so all could hear. "These humans are no longer prisoners. They are guests of the collective. Scholar Nithra, begin formal diplomatic protocols. I believe we have much to discuss." The crowd erupted in confused murmuring. Diplomatic protocols with creatures they had dismissed as weak specimens? It was unprecedented, but so was everything else that had happened today. Over the following hours, the cooking fire burned on. Word had spread through the station, and Torvians came to observe, to taste, to understand. Jay cooked until his arms ached, preparing batches of Garth meat for aliens who had never known anything but raw consumption. Each one walked away changed. Amy sat with Nithra, answering questions about human biology and culture. The scholar had abandoned her detached scientific approach and was simply listening, absorbing. Wondering. Ban had found a group of Torvian engineers and was showing them the heating tools he had constructed from scraps. They could not believe such simple devices could transform food so completely. As the artificial lights dimmed to simulate evening, Jake finally stepped back from his cooking station. His hands were covered in grease and his clothes smelled like smoke, but he was smiling. Amy approached him. "Do you realize what you just did? Cook dinner? You just started an interstellar culinary revolution. These people have never tasted cooked food before. You have changed their entire relationship with eating." Ben joined them, shaking his head in disbelief. "I thought we were going to die today. Instead, we have apparently become diplomats." Jake looked around the habitat. At the Torvians gathered in small groups, discussing what they had experienced. At Vrexal, deep in conversation with his officers about new possibilities. At Nithra, furiously taking notes about human culture and cooking techniques. "We survived because we did what humans always do," he said. "We faced something bigger and stronger than us, and we found a way to turn it to our advantage." That is what we are. That is what we have always been. A notification chimed on Nithra's datapad. She looked up with an expression of amazement. A news broadcast about today's events has been transmitted to other systems. Multiple species are requesting more information about human cooking techniques. The Sundari Confederation has formally asked for a human cultural exchange program. They called us weak, Amy said softly. They did not understand, Jake replied. But they are learning. Somewhere in the station, a Torvian chef was experimenting with heating food for the first time. Somewhere across the galaxy, aliens who had never considered humans worthy of attention were watching recordings of 3 soft, clawless creatures defeat a monster and then transform it into a delicacy. The universe was paying attention now. Jake Carter, survivor and cook, looked up at the stars visible through the habitat's transparent ceiling. He thought about all the species out there who would hear this story. He thought about how they would react, how they would wonder, how they would eventually understand. They called humanity weak because we use fire to prepare our food. They never considered that we might prepare theirs too.